Hello, and welcome to the Physical Therapy Owners Club podcast. I'm Nathan Shields, and joining me today is Ben Meyer out of sunny Florida. It's a cold wintry day in Alaska, and I've got Ben shoving it in my face here on the podcast that he's nice and warm. Ben, thanks for joining me on the podcast. I appreciate it.
It's nice to be here, Nathan. And while we don't have snow here, we do have hurricanes. So we're recovering from the hurricane.
A little give and take there, right? All right. Ben is the co-owner of Billing Done Better, billing company for physical therapists. And he reached out to me, having listened to the podcast before, and wanted to share some of their experience. He's co-owner with his wife. So they have the Billing Done Better company, and wanted to reach out to talk about billing. And we hit this every so often. And I think it's a good refresher to talk about billing because owners typically don't come from a place of knowing exactly how to look at their billing, their collections, and how to hold billers accountable, whether that's in-house or outsourced. So anyways, Ben, let's talk more about you. Where are you coming from and what brought you to the point of starting the Billing Done Better company?
Yeah, well, I started my physical therapy journey as a tech for a small outpatient clinic. And I've done a lot of jobs with a lot of different hats in those small clinics, from visiting doctors, Facebook marketing, Google, SEO kind of stuff. But when I saw billing, I saw a real need, maybe even more so than some of those other areas, and how we as a physical therapy profession, everyone's mad about how little we're being reimbursed from insurance companies, right? So this is a way we can fight back against that. We can collect more from these insurance companies. And it's a really simple thing to do. By just being a little bit more aware of our billing and the way we collect, we can get more money from these companies.
Gotcha. And you're not still a technician, right?
No, I'm a PTA right now. I'm a therapist.
Oh, okay, cool.
Branching into the billing too.
Oh, okay, cool. And your wife has been working in the billing space for some time.
Yep, she was working in the same clinic that I was. She was working the billing department while I was a therapist there. But since then, she's left. She is working at a different office now, but still with the billing and collecting department.
Gotcha. Right. And so you guys come at it from with some experience both on the clinical side and also the billing side. What are some of the things that you're noticing as you're working with PT owners, especially the ones that your wife is working with, that you would say this is what physical therapists are missing out on, or what they need to consider?
Yeah, I would say that if you're not on top of your billing, and by that I mean if you're not aware of how much you're not collecting versus what you should be collecting, you're probably missing out on tens of thousands of dollars. And that's for what I would call a regular clinic. You've got one location, maybe 4 to 6 therapists. You're probably sitting on $30,000 to $40,000 of claims that are sitting out there, that if your biller isn't getting this money, it's going to be going back to the insurance companies.
What are the billers doing to not collect that amount of money? Like, that might be surprising to some people. It's going to be especially surprising to those people who aren't having regular meetings, reviewing the reports and the KPIs related to billing. They might be saying, well, where is that tens of thousands of dollars that you're talking about, Ben?
Yeah. When we spoke earlier, Nathan, you were talking with me and you said, how can billers screw me over as an owner? What areas can they hide money from me that they owe me? So we spoke about 3 different ways here that a biller and collector can screw over you as the owner and what to do about it. Mm-hmm. And the number one way is not trying to collect as hard as they say they are trying to collect.
And how do you measure that? Like you'd say they're not collecting everything that should be expected. That should be an ongoing expectation that you're collecting everything possible. How do you assess for that? Where can you look for those things to really get some objective data instead of just relying on them saying, well, I'm doing everything I can?
Yeah, well, there's a few different things you can do. I know you had Will Humphrey on your podcast as well, and he gave some great statistics about what you can look for to gauge yourself and where you're at with that. I have these here of what he said here. He mentioned over 120 days, it should be less than 10%.
Right. Of your AR aging. Yeah.
Yep. AR aging report. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
From 90 to 120 days, less than 5%.
Yeah. From
60 to 90, less than 5%. And from 0 to 60 days, greater than 80%.
Right. That 85-5-10 is pretty standard, expectation to say, okay, things are going pretty well. The one thing I've thought about with those numbers is there any way are there ways that billers can write things off so that they don't show up on that report and they can massage that report to make it look better somehow? Is there any way they can manipulate those numbers?
It goes by the age of the report. Okay. Right. So how long the claim has been active. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if your report is showing all your claims, there shouldn't be a way for them to hide it. You should be able to see why that claim is there for so long.
Mm-hmm. And can they just write it off? I really don't know the intricacies of billing. Could they just say, here's a $500 account balance. The insurance isn't paying on it or the patient isn't paying on it. Can they just write it off? And if they made such an action, could I see that somewhere else? Your
report should be able to tell you exactly what claims are out there and how old they are. And they should not be able to hide it if you're getting an accurate report from your system.
Right. Is there a write-off report typically in most EMRs or billing softwares where you can bring up a monthly, this is what's been written off in the past month as well, just to see that data?
Yeah, you should be able to do that with most systems as well.
Okay, so you can get an AR aging report along with a write-off report for the last month and compare. Okay, so that's something that I personally would probably go through line item by line item, is just say, why was this written off? Why was this written off? And they need to have comments for each one, right?
Yeah, and it's those
so
comments.
I'm assuming if you had those two together, then you can really you can believe that the AR aging report is true, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you want to listen to their reasoning too about why was this written off? And there are some legitimate reasons why that could be, and they weren't able to collect. Maybe the person's insurance wasn't verified correctly, and that's something that you're just not going to get back.
So there is some wasn't received, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So depending on the reason, there could be legitimate ones, right. But it's up to you as the owner to listen to your biller collector and see, are these legitimate reasons? Are these excuses why it's not being done?
One of the biggest headaches that I've seen in my clinics and other clinics throughout the years is the relationship between biller and front desk. You kind of smirk because you might know what I'm talking about, in that, the biller is it really sucks if the biller has to go after the $20 copay that wasn't collected 5 or 6 times. Now there's a $100 balance on this patient's account that they have to go after simply because the front desk didn't collect it at the time of service. Right. And so that can be really hard when you say not collecting all the money that's necessary. It kind of goes beyond the billing and collecting people and also to the front desk. Right. Everyone has to be on the same page and believing that we need to collect as much as we could possibly can because that's how much we value our services.
Yeah, that's right. A mistake in the front desk at the very beginning can lead to issues with the billing department later. And a lot of times you can fix denials before they happen by making sure that those things are right at the front desk.
Right. Is there a tendency from yours or your wife's experience for billers to come up against denials and they just accept that first phase denial as, okay, I have to write it off? I mean, how many times will you go through the appeals process before you actually write it off?
Well, yes, you're exactly right. Some billers will see that this is written off, or this claim got denied, and then say, well, I've done what I can do, and that's it. And they won't try for more. Or what they'll see is when they'll go into their system, they'll see a claim is pending and just accept that that's pending. Mm. What you want from your biller is for them to go in and say, well, why haven't we gotten paid for this yet? Even though it hasn't yet been denied, can we figure out why it's pending and correct this issue before it becomes a time with timely filing.
And what's that time frame? So if you did the visit today, so today is December 1st, and you did the treatment, you filed the claim today, and it says pending 30 days from now, do you let it sit in pending for another 30 days, or when do you start making those calls to follow up? You
should be getting your eye on it at 30 days.
Okay.
You should be thinking, okay, something's up with this by 30 days. By 60, you should definitely be on the phone and saying, hey, why haven't I gotten my money with this yet?
Right. Gotcha. And that seems like it could be an relatively easy system if you have that in place where, say, January 1st, you're reviewing all the claims that went out on December 1st. And number one, making sure that all the patients were billed, or their insurances were billed for that day, and all the claims are in process, and see where they each are. And that might be the effort of the day. I'm just making up stuff, but it could be a relatively simple process.
Yeah, and it can be. One of the issues that we find with that, though, is that especially if you have your biller in-house, because your biller is also your front desk person, and they're also answering phones.
Office manager. Yeah.
Exactly. So while it's nice that, yes, those things should be done early, that biller that is in the clinic is also dealing with these other things. So those billing tasks get pushed to the side.
Yeah, totally get it. Yeah. At what point would you recommend someone, say they have a full-time biller? Do you have a feel for when that full-time biller needs help? Like, is there a tipping point in terms of gross revenues, potentially, or some other metric where you'd say, this biller's probably met their max capacity, they need to bring on some additional, possibly part-time help?
I don't have any KPIs for you for that, but I would say once a clinic is ready to expand and grow, they need to be considering those options. Because if your billing is based on one person that you have, it's not a scalable model.
Right.
You need to consider bringing on additional help if you're trying to grow as well, whether that's a billing company or maybe hiring on somebody else as well.
Gotcha. There was always this metric, and I'm still not totally clear that I'm convinced of it. But I was told if there's $1 million in revenue, that is sufficient for a full-time biller, essentially. Not $1 million in claims sent out or anything like that, but simply $1 million in revenue. That's a good rule of thumb. And I'm not sure if that's actually too much, or I might be leaning more towards that metric being more towards 800 to 900,000, but give or take a few $100,000, $1 million might be a tipping point for a full-time biller before they need some additional help. Does that feel about right to you?
Yeah, I would say that's about right. But the thing is, the circumstances vary so much; it's difficult to put a direct price tag on that. And you can compare that to the fill rate of your therapists,
right?
And you can ask yourself, well, when do I hire another therapist?
Right.
Well, you might say, well, when it gets to 90% fill rate, then you want to look at it, but that's just one factor. So,
right.
And just as you said, there's one factor to look at, but there's many others as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because it really does depend on what you're asking that biller to do. If you're expecting them to do insurance verifications and authorizations, that number is significantly lower than $1 million in revenue.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Right. It's probably cut in half, if not more. I got you. Well, what are some other things that you might recommend to owners to determine whether or not they get quote unquote screwed?
Well, the next one I would say, so the first one was you have your biller, they're screwing you over by not trying to collect as hard as they say they are. The next one is they're saying your billing is doing great, and it's really not.
Yeah. How do you assess that?
Well, first of all, you have to say, are they basing that on your standard of doing great, or is that their standard of doing great?
It's really easy to objectify that, right? In our situation, we made it really simple. We saw 100 visits in the month prior. Say we had an average reimbursement rate of $100 per visit. we expected the biller to collect $10,000 next month, or in that month that we're talking about. And if she didn't meet that, then we had to have a discussion as to why, right? And she got good enough where, 15 days into the month, she says, hey, I'm on target. Or 15 days in the month, she's like, wait, wow, we're really behind. So I really need to hammer the phones and see what's happening so we can hit our target at the end of the month. But a really simple metric to go by is simply projected collections in the given month based on number of visits in the previous month times your average reimbursement rate and that's an easy metric to go by. And if you do that, then you can objectively say things are going well or not, right?
Yeah, that is exactly right. And having those metrics in place gives your biller and collector an objective to shoot for. What do you say is a good job? Like, for instance, we could have a PT in our clinic and maybe they have a 60% productivity rate. And who's to say if that's good or bad? Well, an owner, you should know that that's not where it should be.
Yeah.
Right. But who sets that standard? It's not the PT. It should be the owner. And it's the same exact thing with the billing too. We need to be setting that standard for the biller and not the other way around.
Yeah. And I think that's where physical therapists, not to fault them necessarily for not holding that standard, but most of them just don't know. At least that was my case. I don't know how to hold my biller accountable. I don't know what a standard should be, right? And physical therapists are much the same way. A lot of them might hear you say 60% productivity is not acceptable. If they're not measuring that statistic and seeing how it affects their business, then they don't know if 60% productivity is appropriate or not. Just so everyone knows, it's not.
Yeah. I hope your therapists aren't doing that right now.
Right. How many appointments in a given week are filled? Right. That's exactly what the productivity rate is. Are there any other metrics like that to determine objectively if things are quote unquote going well?
To keep it simple, I like the one that you mentioned about the percentage of collection. And to know where you should be, I encourage owners to get a broader perspective of your market. So that could mean reaching out to other PT owners in your area and say, hey, what are you guys doing with billing? Am I significantly less, or how is that working? And when you have that broader perspective, you can determine, okay, I need to expect this from my billers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that projected collection statistic is an easy one to go off of. The AR aging report stats that you shared, the 80-55-10 is another one to easily go off of. Now, with you guys, in our situation, the 10% of 120 days and over typically didn't include auto liens that might be going into court or workers' comp. Do you make that adjustment?
No, I haven't made that adjustment for that.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. We usually set those aside because we would take lien cases and we knew they were going to court. This could take a year or 2 years.
I mean, you could, if you wanted to, if you're feeling that's affecting your numbers and not showing what you feel it should be showing, then yeah, you could.
Yeah, exactly. Because I can't really hold my biller accountable to a lawyer that's dragging something through court. As long as they're in communication with the law firm every month or so, then
yeah, that's exactly right.
Right. Yeah. All right. What's the third thing?
Third thing, not communicating how your billing and collecting can improve.
Yeah, I like this one. Tell me what you think.
Well, really, this stems down to the mindset that your billing and collector is at. It's very different from the mindset of an owner. An owner is going to go and look at a situation or a system in their business and try to think about ways that we can improve this system to make it better, to bring in more revenue for the business, right? That's not what a biller or collector is typically going to do.
Right.
They say that, hey, I'm hired to do the billing and collect, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to billing and collect. And they're not looking for those same ways that the business as a whole can do better.
Yeah, I like what you're talking about, because even in my meetings now, I mentioned this before we pushed record, is that I don't think I take that next step with my biller to say, what can we do better? Is there something missing? Whether that's a front desk procedure that we could do better at, or maybe it's an insurance verification procedure that can get a little bit quicker, you name it. what can we do to better improve our billing and collections process overall? What would make your job easier? And if you start asking those questions over and over again on a monthly basis, and if you're not meeting with your biller and collector on a monthly basis, then you need to do that and require that they do so, right? To review exactly the stuff that we're talking about. But to give them ownership over that department and say, okay, what can you do to do better? What can we do to help you do better? What can we do to make this cash flow faster, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, I would put that under just developing a better relationship with your biller and doing that monthly checkup. Or, we as therapists, we do progress reports on our patients, right? Every so often, monthly progress report with your biller just to go over why are these things happening and are there any trends happening? Are there repeated mistakes that are happening over and over again that if we fix one small thing, well, now these bills won't get denied over and over again.
Yeah. Will, my partner, mentioned there's one company in particular, I don't think he named them in a previous podcast, but they know that the day after they send a claim out to a particular insurance company, they have to resubmit the exact same claim the next day because that company is going to deny the first claim that gets sent for whatever reason. So the very next day, they just know that's part of the system. They have to.
It's awful, isn't it? It's terrible. The games that these insurance companies play, and it really just comes down to them just not wanting to pay out. That's really what it is. They're trying to collect as much money for themselves and not give it to the therapists that are working with these patients.
Where I think the biller and the collections company can really be worth their weight in gold to an owner is, number one, like we said, being on top of the collections, getting as much money as possible, getting their systems really, really down. If they do all of that, they are great. They're providing gold level service. If they want to provide platinum level service, taking exactly what you're talking about to a step further to say, what I'm seeing is this insurance company is either denying this singular code as long as you're billing the other code with it, or it pays better if you use this code in conjunction with the others than the other, or because of MPPR, you might want to use 4 different codes instead of 2 codes with multiple units. When you start getting that kind of feedback and direction from your billing and collections company, that is making them worth their weight in platinum versus gold.
Oh, honestly. I believe that for sure. I'll even take that one step further. Diamond level service, if they can also say, hey, we're going to do a training with your therapist or your front desk and get this problem fixed.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I know for my friend Mark Moore in Arizona, he and his biller, who is in-house, developed a cheat sheet. They have it laminated with the major insurance companies that they deal with in their community. And it's exactly that. It's when you bill this code or don't bill this code and then with this insurance, or you can only bill this many units with this insurance. And that's laminated and posted everywhere for the providers to utilize. Now you know that, number one, your biller is in tune, and they are, because of their efforts, they're getting the rest of the team in tune to really maximize collections.
That's exactly right, Nathan.
Yeah, that's huge, man. Great. Anything else that you want to talk about in regards to billing collections?
I think we covered it, man. I really do. We did a great job.
Yeah, it's exciting because I think this is an area I love to educate owners on this because, like I said, they don't have a lot of this train. I mean, you can't go into all the books that I recommend, Good to Great, E-Myth Revisited, and Traction in these books. You're not going to find how to teach a PT owner how to hold their billing collections department accountable. So I love having these episodes with experts like you and your wife, and to talk about it and really help them maximize their collections. Because really, to quote my partner Will Humphreys, profitability unlocks possibility. And if they can increase that average reimbursement even $5-10 per visit, makes huge potentials for
it. Just starts flowing in. Yeah. Right. You wouldn't think about it too. Just a few dollars, but per patient, over a week, over a month, over a year, you're talking tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars even.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So Ben, if people wanted to get a hold of you and or your wife at Billing Done Better, how would they do that?
We have a few options. You can visit our website, billingdonebetter.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn, just searching for Benjamin Meyer.
And Myers, Meyer?
Meyer. Yep.
Yeah. If they wanted to contact you directly, do they go through the website or do you have an email address you want to share?
You can send it to billingdonebetter@gmail.com.
Okay. No spaces, no periods, billingdonebetter@gmail.com.
At Gmail.
All right, cool. Awesome, man. Well, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, it was an honor being here, Nathan. Thank you very much.